All right, we are back in the booth. And I'm gonna do another frit side. I'm actually gonna do this for a friend of mine, one of my fishing partners. He wanted one, he saw the Phantom Green frit side I did last week, and he wanted one in red. So I'm gonna do one in a fire crawl pattern, transparent ghost. And we're going to use, except on this one, we're going to use the Louisville Craw stencil, the number 5, just to kind of change it up a little bit. And let's get started. So we've got the frit side 5 blank. And what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to take a red light golden paint, and I'm going to go over the top and I'm going to go over the bottom. I'm going to be using my Creos PS771. That's kind of my go-to. So we're going to be shooting it on low pressure, just so we don't have a lot of overspray. So we're going to go lightly over the top. Lightly over the bottom. And we're going to let that dry for a minute. We're going to put a few more coats on. So now that that's dry, we'll go ahead and hit it again. We're going to have to put a few coats on this. So we're going to let that dry. All right, so the top and the bottom is dry, and we're going to move to the stencil part of this. So, like in some of my previous videos, you know, I have the stencils pretty much cut up. This one is actually still on, it's on one sheet. So I've got to be a little bit more careful with this, because it's not going to bend probably the way I want it to. And I'm going to look at this, and I may, well, I'll give you another tip. Make sure that you clean the stencil off totally before you do this, because when you don't have it cut up, you got to kind of be able to look through it, be able to look through the bait to get this done. And it's really going to be no different. I may clip a little of this back off of this, because I want to be able to butt it up. So I am going to cut that. And all I did was cut the corner out of the stencil so I can get it back on the bait. And that actually does help. But if you notice here, when I do this, this right here is going to fall short of the face of the bait. So I'm going to kind of improvise that and do a little adjustment on that. So what we're going to do, we're going to clean our gun out. And I'm going to put some black in the gun, and then we're going to shoot the stencil portion of this. Like I said, it's not that difficult to do, but I mean, you got to be careful, because you want it to line up correctly. And so I'm going to have to really take my time on this one and get it lined up. I like the stencil. His stencils are very nice. I'm not sponsored by him, so I actually got these, I think, from sugartit.com. But I think he has his own page also. So you're just going to have to go check him out. Maybe it's louisvillestencils.com. I don't know offhand. I've had these for quite a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide my stencils out of my way, and I'm going to bring it a little bit closer to me. And I'll turn it up where you can actually see it. So I'm going to line it up. And like I've told you in previous videos with the crawls, you want to make sure that it's kind of getting toward that bottom. And I'm going to spray this in sections. I'm not going to spray it all at one time, because I want it at the bottom of the bait, and I'm going to have to adjust it. I already know that. So we're gonna stop there, and see, that looks really good. So now what I gotta do is I gotta count it over, and that's 3. And then I'm just gonna slide it down, because it's gonna be a little bit different with the way I got this set up. So that's looking good. So now I just got to figure out how I can probably take some scissors and just slide this down. And this is an easy trick. All I'm gonna do is take the scissors and make a line right down here in between these two, just so I can fold this stencil up to match up with my bait. I don't want to mess the stencil up, but like I said, sometimes it's just hard to get it to do what you want it to do with depending on what bait you're using. So we're going to line this back up, and I'm going to lower that a little bit, and I'm going to shoot this front side. I just got to make sure I know where I've left off at. That's the key to all of this, is just making sure that you're in line with that. And see, that turned out pretty good. And then what I'll do is I'll just try to maneuver this piece up into here and get it on the bait, where I can just lay it flat a little bit and connect it. Let's try to come up a little bit higher than that. I got off track a little bit there. I want it on the flat part of the bait. Okay, there we go. And we'll go ahead and darken this eye. And I'm gonna let that dry, and then we'll just flip it over. All right, before I flip it over, I do want to bring a couple of these up a little bit higher. Yeah, that looks better. I just like bringing my scale pattern all the way up, okay? And then what we'll do is we'll just flip it over, and I'm gonna try to do this upside down. I'm used to doing it this way, so we're gonna go with it. So we're gonna make sure we got it close to the bottom of the bait. It's actually easier to see upside down, really. Okay, that did look better. That was a lot easier to do for some reason. So then we're just going to stretch it out a little bit and use some of the taller ones to go up the bait. We just got to line it up correctly and kind of get the spacing right on it a little bit. I didn't do a great job on that front side. Okay, and now we'll just do the two up here, line it up, get these two done, and then we'll just try to tie our other section in. That turned out really good. So now you just want to bend it up where you can get it on the bait flat, and that turned out good. So we'll get this eye. So we're going to use a bright yellow eye for this to make a fire eye. So I think that's really going to be cool. So now I'm just going to flip it over. This is really one of my favorite things about this stencil is this bottom piece where you can where you just do your lines, your crawl lines, and you just want to line it up with your hook hanger. So I just kind of put it toward the middle, lay it flat. And it does a great job. And I like his modeling, so I'm going to use it on this. It's just a little different, a little bit bigger. Gives it a kind of a different look. Okay. So I'm going to let this dry, and then we'll come back, we'll do a little bit of modeling, and then we're going to spray a couple different color candies over the top of this. So be right back. All right, so that is dry, and now we're going to take this small, tiny modeling stencil from Anarchy, and we're going to do a little bit of black and a little bit of yellow. We're going to throw a twist into this because we're going to have yellow eyes in this. So let's see here. Let me turn this up just a tad. So we'll put some on the shoulders here. Okay. Put a little bit here. A little bit of black there. We're going to put some yellow in this also. Give it a twist. So we'll roll it over. We'll come over the tops. Hit a little bit here. Okay. So I'm gonna let that dry, then I'm gonna switch my gun out and I'm gonna put some yellow in the gun. All right, so that is dry. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put a little bit of yellow modeling on this, just in a couple areas, just to kind of throw these eyes that we're gonna use in here. Give it a different look. Okay. All right, that's all we're going to do with the yellow. So we're going to let that dry, then we're going to come back in and put some candies on this. All right, so now what we're going to do, I've already pre-mixed the candies before I started. I did some blood red, which is 4650 in the Candy 2.0 line. And I did some Brandywine 4665 in the Candy 2.0 line. And what I've done, I've just mixed it with a little UVLS and a little 4011 reducer, and I've let it sit. It's been sitting now for probably 30 minutes. You want to let that bond up before you use it. This will be a game changer for the lure too. So all I'm going to do with it is I'm going to take the Brandywine first, and I'm going to go over the top. I always want the top of the crawl a little shade darker, so that's what this Candy 2.0 Brandywine is going to do for me. It'll make the bait pop a little bit more. So we're going to get that down. And we're just going to go over the top with this one. We're going over the red. And it's going to darken it up. We'll let it bleed down a little bit. So we're going to let that dry for just a minute. Then we'll come back and do another coat, and then we'll do the bottom in blood red. All right, so we've got the Brandywine dry on top. Now we're going to come to the bottom, and we're going to go with the blood red, which is just a little bit, I mean, the top's going to look kind of cherryish, and the bottom is going to be more of a just red, a light red transparent. I'm not going to put a lot on this bottom, but I'm going to soften that black up a little bit. And that's about all I'm going to do with it. So we're going to let that dry. Then we'll come back. We'll get our eyes in it. And then we'll get a coat of UVLS on this. All right, so the top of the bait, the bottom of the bait's dry. We're done. I'm gonna put the eyes in it, and then what we'll do, we'll shoot some UVLS over it, then we'll go over everything that we did. Now for these eyes, we're gonna go bright, bright fluorescent yellow. This is gonna be a fire crawl, and I think it'll just touch it off. It'll make it stand out, especially if you're fishing in a little bit of muddy water. And I hope my friend at my church that I'm doing this for is gonna enjoy this. His name is Vince James. Vince is a great guy. I fish with Vince a lot. And he asked me would I do one for him, so I figured I'd just capture it on film while I'm doing it. He wanted a frit side, so I had a few left. And these frit sides you can actually get at alternativelures.com. Luis has excellent blanks, high quality, so go check him out at alternative.com. All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna go ahead and spray some UVLS all over this bait, and it'll clear it up. And then we'll go over everything that we've done. You want to get this good and wet. It is an acrylic polyurethane that will lock your colors in. Does an excellent job. So we're going to let that dry. And while it's drying, as soon as I clean this gun out, I will go over the steps, and then we'll get a coat of UV resin on this. All right, so what we did to start with, we started out with the Frit Side 5 blank from alternativelures.com. We came in with a golden red, and we did the tops and the bottom. We didn't do anything to the side because we want this to be a ghost. It's going to be a ghost fire crawl. So then what we did, we loaded up some black in our gun, which was the golden black, which we use a lot. I like to use black on stencils. I just think it just gives me more options. So what we did was we used the Louisville Craw stencil number 5, and we used his crawl pattern on both sides of the bait. Then we flipped it over and we did our usual, this is his really go-to, is the bottom of your crawl bait, your lines, and then I used some of his stenciling to finish it off. Don't forget, we modified the stencil a little bit. You got to kind of play with that. We cut the back off, and we cut a slit in the front where I could bend the stencil over to keep it flat on the bait. Then we came over it with the Anarchy tiny mottled stencil. They call it Creature Feature. And we used the black golden, and then to throw a little bit in there, because I knew I was going to use yellow eyes, we used a little yellow median from Golden and put just a few shots on each side to kind of make those eyes just stand out a little bit better. Then we came across it, shot a coat of UVLS clear over top of it to lock it in. Now we're just going to let it dry for just a few minutes. And, I'm going ahead of myself. I went ahead. We didn't do the candy. On the top part of the bait, after I put the red on, we used a Brandywine. And the reason I use Brandywine is it's just a little bit darker shade of candy. I like the top to be darker. It gives it more of like a dark cherry red. And then I took the blood red and I went over the bottom of the bait. So it's a very simple pattern. These are all, water-based paint, so this will be an easy one for you to do. You don't have to have that Louisville stencil to do it. You can use Whitmore Farm. You can use, there's a umpteen others out there that have stencils out there. Insane Custom Stencils is fantastic. Russ has great products, but I'll be using more of Russ's here in the weeks to come. Craws are my favorite thing to paint. So I may do a series on certain things, but yeah, it's the crawl patterns are great. You can just use these water-based paints. You can just use them, mix match them up, and put your own twist to it. eyes came from Barlow's Tackle. They are a fluorescent chrome yellow, really cool looking eyes. I think the eyes really make or break your bait when you're painting and choosing what you're going to put on them. So we're going to let this dry just for a few more minutes. I'm going to put this other stuff up. Then we'll get the UV resin out, and we'll put a coat on it, and we'll finish up. All right, so we're ready to do the UV resin on this bait. And I use Luma UV is what I use, Red Label. I got asked that yesterday by Jonathan Wampler of Bad Boy Customs. Me and Jonathan are friends. He wanted to know which one I used. I mean, they make a couple different ones, but I like the red. So we're going to go ahead and just get a good coat on this, and you can see it's going to clear it straight up. You're really going to be able to see how transparent this thing is now, because the baits, even though you put a clear coat on it before you start, it's still kind of cloudy. So you can see it just cleared it immediately up. And now you can really see the difference in the Brandywine and the blood red. They're both great colors. I use them a lot because, like I said, I paint more crawls than I do anything. Those are my favorite things to paint. The good thing about these Fritz-side blanks is they're smooth. So a smoother blank is going to be easier to lay a stencil down on. It really is giving this one a good look. I hope Vince likes this. Vince is a really good friend of mine. We fish a lot together, and he wanted it, so I'm trying to get it done. I've been on a roll here lately. I've done 4 or 5 videos in a week. Hadn't done some in a while. I've really kind of gotten my love for it again. Maybe I just needed to take a break. Okay, so I got to do the bottom. Make sure there's no bubbles in it. Don't have to have a lot of UV resin on this. Just want to make sure that it's all smooth. Really turned out cool. I think he's really going to enjoy this. He really loves to bass fish, and I do too. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to get it into the box, and I'm going to go ahead and let it sit. Then we'll come back and do a final review, and we'll be right back. All right, so we have taken the lure out of the box, and this is the finished result of it. This is a Ghost Fire Craw using the Louisville Stencil crawl pattern. So if you like the video, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you know when I have upcoming videos. Yeah, please hit that subscribe button. I've got 55% of my viewers that aren't subscribed. It will just help my algorithm and the channel a whole lot if you would just hit that like button and subscribe. I would appreciate it. And like I always say, I'll catch you next time. Thanks.